Now, HIV prevention, and I'm skipping to prevention before treatment because it's very relevant, is essentially best achieved by a number of different modalities. We have multiple ways to prevent HIV infection. And so really, if we look at the ways in the world that we're trying to at least try to combat the spread of HIV infection, male and female condoms work. The problem with condoms is that they're not used as prevalently. It really is a behavior-driven intervention, and a woman may not be able to have control over condom use of her partner, and unfortunately this has not been a very effective modality for HIV prevention worldwide, is just relying on condoms. Circumcision is a very effective modality for HIV prevention. Essentially, underneath the foreskin, there are a number of immune cells that can accept the virus, CD4 cells, Langerhans cells, macrophages, dendritic cells. It's a very rich medium for HIV acquisition is to be non-circumcised. And so big studies in the 90s, essentially the early and mid 90s in various places in sub-Saharan Africa have shown us very clearly that circumcision and being circumcised is a very effective modality for the man to reduce his risk of HIV acquisition. It actually isn't necessarily an improvement for women, whether they are having heterosexual risk with a circumcised or non-circumcised man, but it definitely does reduce rates of infection to men, and circumcision rollout is one major prevention modality that we're rolling out worldwide. This was a trick question. This was actually meant to be a question. There is no HIV vaccine. Working on it very avidly. There is a big trial going on in South Africa right now of the most promising candidate for an HIV vaccine, but we currently do not have a vaccine. And then I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking in the next few slides about HIV prevention modalities of PrEP, HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis, and treatment of the HIV-infected individual. In terms of treatment, I do want to say before we get to PrEP that treating everyone in the world with HIV infection and reducing their viral load down to minimal levels is the single most effective prevention modality worldwide. If we could treat everyone in the world, every 36.7 million people in the world with HIV infection, get their virus down to undetectable, we could eliminate the epidemic. And the 3 studies that have shown that most convincingly, the first was called the HPTN 052 study, where people were actually randomized to the HIV-infected individuals getting treatment early versus getting later. And they were all in serodiscordant partnerships where there was one positive partner and one negative partner. And this led to a 96% reduction in transmission if you treated everyone with HIV infection and got their viral load down to undetectable. So it is the most effective way of preventing HIV. We now have some observational studies called the partner study and opposites attract that in a number of both heterosexual and men who have sex with men, couples with effective treatment of the person who is positive, that it is almost impossible to transmit HIV to the uninfected partner. And this has led to a movement in the United States called U equals U, undetectable equals untransmissible, with the idea that the most effective way to prevent HIV transmission is to treat the individual. That's also most the effective way to improve the morbidity and mortality of those living with HIV. So this is really the biggest push worldwide, is to get everyone on treatment. However, what is PrEP? What is the idea of pre-exposure prophylaxis? The idea here is to give people who are at risk, HIV-negative individuals, a pill, either daily or around the time of sex, giving them a pill to prevent HIV infection. It's like malaria prophylaxis, that if you've been exposed, if you have a pill in your body that is active against HIV, that you're going to prevent actually the acquisition of HIV infection. The only agent approved for PrEP, or pre-exposure prophylaxis, worldwide is represented here. It's a blue pill, and it's a combination of 2 antiretroviral agents called tenofovir disoproxil fumarate combined with emtricitabine, and the brand name, at least here, is called Truvada. WHO actually approved PrEP in the year 2015 with those same guidelines that said everyone should be treated worldwide. They also put out recommendations that everyone at risk for HIV worldwide should have access and be given PrEP. Rollout of pre-exposure prophylaxis and PrEP worldwide has been much slower. It's been more difficult to convince people that, and to convince governments that giving people at risk an HIV medication is more important than giving people who are actually HIV infected fully active treatments. And so every country has decided for itself in terms of the rollout of PrEP. Uganda and Kenya are rolling out PrEP. Zimbabwe is starting to roll out PrEP. South Africa is rolling out PrEP. But different countries, India, for example, is not rolling out PrEP. They are focusing on treatment. So different countries have made their own decisions about policy decisions about PrEP versus treatment. I'm again, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip ahead so we can do a little bit more around treatment and then get to some of the future directions in HIV medicine. I will say that in this country, at least, PrEP is still, there is some controversy, and we're encouraging primary care providers to prescribe PrEP because just like birth control, when primary care providers prescribe PrEP as opposed to specialty HIV providers, we think it will be more worldwide, more adopted worldwide.